14 laps then, the distance for this race. 14 laps, 38.78 miles. We are right behind the Roton of Mark Palmer, who did not get away as crisply as he would have liked. In fact, he had an appalling start away, and there's a rear drive chain lying on the start-finish straight, so somebody broke their rear chain and are in for a very short race indeed. Reynolds, however, number 3, hit the front. Reynolds from, it looks like, Rob McElnay, number 1. It's one of the Nortons, and it has to be, I suspect, Terry Reimer in the all-black leathers in 3rd place. Another Kawasaki is in 4th, but Reynolds had a terrific start. Teammate Morrison is in 4th, number 6, yes indeed. There's Terry Reimer, the all-black figure in your picture now. In 3rd place, number 23, Terry Reimer, championship leader. And quite a long way to go, nearly 39 miles, so they have to settle themselves down on these very, very difficult conditions. They're on slick tyres, and as you saw earlier, all the tyres being warmed to get them nice and sticky, so that when they go into the first right-hander of Old Hall, the front end stays in. The rear chain flew off the number 4 Yamaha of Ray Stringer, so Stringer's race over almost before it began.
Reynolds is pushing hard at the front. Of course, he needs to win this race to keep his hopes alive of winning the championship. Rob McElnay's hanging in there in 2nd. Terry Reimer's looking very threatening in 3rd. In fact, he's looking up the inside of Rob McElnay. The difficulty is, as you can see, there are damp patches off the racing line, so for any rider to pass a rider in front of him to outbrake them, he needs to go off the racing line onto the damp part of the track and making things fairly impossible to actually overtake.
Riding now with the race leader, John Reynolds, and as you can see, a very clear track ahead of him. The 29-year-old from Nuttall in Nottinghamshire, who has said that he wishes to contest World Superbike next year, and I have to say is probably our hottest tip around, along with Terry Reimer, of course, who's sitting in 3rd place in this race to do exactly that. But Rob McElnay, last year's championship winner, who is down in 5th in the championship, riding in 2nd place, number 1 McElnay. This is the race leader, however, Reynolds, who needs to get it all right today and not do anything silly, such as he did at Cadwell when he charged up the inside a little bit too hot and ran totally off the track. On another occasion, he collided, and if you were watching that particular coverage from Cadwell Park, you would have seen that he collided with Terry Reimer. So he's got to get it all right today, get out in front and keep a nice, safe position. 20 points he'll get for the win, but McElnay in 2nd place, the pole position man, challenging home.
Reynolds has had a total of 21 race wins at national level this year, which is quite incredible. He's the man on form at the moment. He's so small that when he leans the bike right over and puts his knee onto the road, he can't keep his other foot on the footrest, and we'll perhaps get a glimpse of that as the race progresses. But he's certainly got everything together this year, 29 years old. Rob McElnay with a wealth of experience on bike number 1 there behind him, chasing hard. And I think Rob's pole position here gave him a lot of confidence for this race, and I don't expect John Reynolds to tail Rob McElnay off at all.
Well, 21 national wins, as you say, Roger, but 5 of those have been in Supercup, and if John Reynolds didn't win in Supercup, then he didn't finish, and basically those are the statistics. 5 wins and 3 did not finishes for various reasons, so that underlines just how dominant Reynolds can be. This is the 5th place man, Jamie Whittam, on the Suzuki, the lone Suzuki in the race, and in fact the lone Suzuki on the British national scene at the top level, and he's pressing hard behind Brian Morrison, number 6. So Morrison from Kirkcaldy is coming under just a little bit of pressure from James Whittam on the Suzuki, who is ever so close, almost touching, and looking as though he's going to go past. The Kawasaki, however, just a little bit quicker on the straight where it really matters, and when they're pulling something like 145 miles an hour through here, this is very quick. Still in 6th gear, up towards Clay Hill, over the crest, and that's hairy stuff indeed. The front wheel goes light, they drop it down, flicking it through into Druids, the right-hander of Druids, where the track stays quite damp as they go under the trees, but fortunately, although it's cloudy, there doesn't appear to be any sign of rain, and that's the last thing we need. to spoil what is going to be, I'm sure, an unbelievably good race at the front. Whitton then just dropping away, but you're completing a pretty hectic lap with the Suzuki rider from Huddersfield, and there he is, number 5, Jamie Whitton, throwing himself off the right-hand side of the bike in pursuit of the Kawasaki. Incredible style from that young man.
Whittam, of course, was one of the wildcard entries for this year's British Grand Prix. Proved himself to be a worthy choice, because he finished the French Grand Prix actually in 8th place at his first attempt. So having a little bit of Grand Prix experience, Jamie Whittam on the Suzuki, which is slightly underpowered against the other machines, but John Reynolds having no such problem with the Team Green Kawasaki there. Reimer getting the fastest lap on the Norton at 1:36.88. That compares with the pole position time of Rob McElnay of 36.48. So the track obviously able to do lap record breaking times.
Race leader Reynolds then hoping to add the 1992 750cc crown to his 1990 600 title, which he describes as the best moment to date in his racing career. But I think there are some occasions in the 1992 season which will top that experience, because he's had some superb rides, and the Kawasaki's, when they're going, and they have been going most of the time because they're pretty reliable, have been invincible. Terry Reimer, however, is now closing on the back end of Rob McElnay, number 1. This is the race leader still, Reynolds. Knee down on the tarmac, and as Roger Burnett said, he's fairly stocky. He's not tall by any means, so his legs aren't as long as those of Terry Reimer, the all-black leathered man in 3rd place. And Terry is indeed a very tall figure, well over 6 feet, which he has to wrap round that rotary Norton chassis. And he's having a good look on the inside and made Rob McElnay sit up. So Reimer went for that one. Rob McElnay won't be best pleased about that. Now, Roger, whose fault was that, if it was anyone's fault?
I can't believe that. That was Terry actually committing himself to the line. You see him going underneath Rob McElnay, Rob easing the bike up, else, really, believe me, they would have collided, they both would have fallen down. But Terry was committed. It's 140 miles an hour through there, and it's a blind brow that you can actually not see over. So he was very committed, and I'm sure that Rob will have words to say about that at the end of this.
Well, number 23, Terry Reimer, the 25-year-old Londoner, championship leader, and I keep repeating that he cannot do the last round at Brands Hatch, so he really does have to score maximum points here at Oulton Park if he's to be in with any chance at all of winning the championship. And even then, some misfortune has to befall the Kawasaki men. This man, however, the race leader, John Reynolds, determined that that will not happen. If there's anything at all he can do about it. And Reynolds really on the pipe, and he knows now that Terry Reimer is closing, and closing very quickly indeed, the number 23 Norton. So Reimer then now up to 2nd. Morrison still circulating very well in 4th. Jamie Whittam still in 5th. Then it's the 2nd of the 2 Nortons, Robert Dunlop. Then it's the Wotan of Mark Farmer, who had an appalling start and is making amends by carving through the pack. So there's an interesting battle going on there, but a shake of the Kawasaki head from John Reynolds as he flicks it right and then left. Reynolds then will have to work, I think, because Terry Reimer is looking pretty determined.
In actual fact, Reynolds is the fastest man on the track. Looking at the lap time monitor, Reynolds has set the fastest lap of the race so far, but Terry Reimer is the man on the charge. He's got past Rob McElnay, as we saw, in quite dramatic style. He looks very mean, he looks determined to catch John Reynolds, and if he can keep and sustain that determination, it only needs John to make one small mistake, which he's not in the habit of doing, but it only needs one small mistake, and Terry is right with him.
And Terry is right with him. Number 23 then, Terry Reimer, originally from Lee Green in South London, now lives in Barnhurst in Kent, which is still pretty much in the same sort of area. Is riding a variety of motorcycles this year, and this is the man we're talking about. The Norton, as you can see, is his mount for the British National Series. He rides factory Kawasaki's in World Endurance and rides a Ducati in the World Superbike Championship. So not an easy thing to do, and Roger Burnett is probably the best qualified man to comment on that. 3 totally different sorts of motorcycle, Roger.
Terry's really shown his class this year by riding the various bikes that he's ridden. In fact, he's ridden 5 different make of machine this year, some with success, the 3 with success and some without. But the Norton is the one that he's riding here today, and as you see, he's now virtually on the back wheel of John Reynolds, so I'm sure that Terry must have put in the fastest lap on that last lap to catch John. The rotary Norton is slightly faster than the Kawasaki, so I wouldn't imagine it would be too long before he is nibbling away and trying to get in front of John Reynolds.
The one piece of credit we haven't, of course, given yet to Terry Reimer is his 5th place in the British Grand Prix in his first attempt. So a sterling effort indeed, but now he's closing and the stage is set for a ding-dong battle between the Kawasaki of Reynolds, number 3, and Reimer with his head down on the Norton, and he knows just how quick it is. Reynolds is in 3rd place in the championship but leading the race. Reimer 2nd place in the race and in the championship lead, and could possibly, and maybe this is part of his strategy for the race, could possibly force John Reynolds into making some sort of slip. And Oulton Park is the sort of circuit you could slip up on if you wanted to, and look at him on the inside, hard on the brakes. And you can see from John Reynolds' point of view that he's been well and truly passed, but the Kawasaki man fighting back, no good. The Norton firmly in front, very determined activity from Terry Reimer. John Reynolds won't be pleased about that, but Reimer did it on riding ability. That wasn't about top speed, Roger. That was about riding ability, determination, and outright bravery.
I think that John's been caught with his trousers down, so to speak, and I think he'll have to wake up a little bit in this race to get back at Terry. Terry's come through from 3rd or 4th place early on, past Rob McElnay, caught John Reynolds up and has now passed him, and he's the man that's really fired up and he knows what he's doing. John is closing there, braking into the Shell Oils corner, but John now needs to get a grip of himself and really set off to go back at Terry. And I think we're really in for a fantastic finish to this race. This is how it happened, and as you said, Barry, is complete riding ability. You see Terry going further on the brakes, up the inside of John Reynolds. John couldn't lean over into the corner because Terry was there, and then he comes through, and John's got all the work to do now.
This is exactly the scenario that could result in John Reynolds becoming just a teeny-weeny bit desperate and maybe doing something silly. Let's hope not, because we certainly want the very able and capable Kawasaki rider to hang on to his 2nd place. A lot of people here, of course, would will him back in front, but Terry Reimer knew, and he spoke about it at the outset of the race, he knew that he could settle for nothing less than 20 points in each of these encounters, and if all goes well for the rest of this race, it will move him on to 150 points. Then he needs Lady Luck to shine for him at Brands Hatch in his absence. Well over half distance now then, 2/3 in fact of the distance into this race, and Terry Reimer is now some 25 yards ahead. Rob McElnay, number 1, in 3rd place, the red bike in your picture being dropped away just a little bit, very soon to fall into the clutches, I suspect, of the other Kawasaki ridden by Brian Morrison, number 6. But the battle royal at the front, and Reynolds going in hard there, and watch the rev counter, bottom right of your picture, 10, 11, 12, peeking through there, 12, 13,000 revs into the red line, and shouldn't really go over that red line because it could end up dumping all the internals of the engine in a big way on the circuit. But you can see he's buzzing it, absolutely wringing the neck of the Kawasaki, but still the Norton going away from him. How frustrating can that be, Roger?
Extremely frustrating, and John is doing everything right at the moment. I think he's now got a grip of himself, as I said he should, and he looks like he's now in a position where he's stabilised the gap between him and Terry. And I think now it's up to Terry to try and break away, which I don't think he's going to be able to do. John is going to be able to watch. The track is drying those damp patches. You see how he comes up tight onto Terry in the braking area. Now we'll go through onto the start and finish to complete lap number 9. And for the next couple of laps, I would imagine John to sit and watch, and then I think he's going to make a real charge and effort to repass Terry.
totally frightening from the rider's point of view. A very difficult and demanding circuit, Oulton Park, with its ups and downs, adverse cambers. A lot of the bends have an apex and then the track falls away, so the back goes very light. The top six, as you can see, Robert Dunlop on the second of the two Nortons in the top six, but right behind him is the number 46 Roton of Mark Farmer. So very much a success story, the Rotary Engine Brigade in the 1992 series. Terry Reimer, however, is having to defend his rear end from a determined challenge by John Reynolds, flicking it through. Full stalls. Now, up through the gearbox here, over the brow of the hill, and then driving down towards Knickerbrook, 150 miles an hour as they go through here. Again, adverse camber, very tricky circuit, can't run wide onto the curbs, get in all sorts of trouble. Still in sixth gear over the brow of the hill, incredibly quick. Norton, number 23, Terry Reimer, leads Kawasaki, number 3, John Reynolds. Still it's Rob McElnay, and that battle for third, fourth and fifth as Reynolds, Kawasaki tries to spit him off, but the front wheel going light again in the air. And just watch the two totally contrasting lines as they go down into Deerleek with everything bottoming, all the suspension all the way down. Reynolds Kawasaki doesn't seem to be handling quite as well.
The problem is John is a very light rider, and all through practice, in fact, he's had trouble with the rear wheel starting to spin as he comes through the start and finish area. The track is slightly damp today, and that won't be helping, and it sets the bike off in a weave and a shake, and John has to sit there and hang on, and that's literally what's happening. But it's quite a frightening experience, and John's overcoming that. But the problem is, if you set the suspension and everything good for that particular area, it makes it poor in the rest of the circuit. So can't afford to do that. But John certainly doesn't seem to be suffering from that. Right on the back wheel of Terry, 3 laps to go.
The fact that the circuit is still damp and it's quite cold here as well at Oulton Park today is underlined by the fact that these riders are about 2 seconds outside the outright lap record set by Ron Haslam on a similar machine to that which is being ridden by race leader Terry Reimer ahead of us now. So I think they're not prepared to throw caution to the wind, and frankly, who can blame them? And that's a severe shake of the steering head again. And you saw the movement clearly there through the on-bike camera of number 3, John Reynolds. And the Kawasaki just a little bit unhappy. But Reynolds absolutely squeezing everything out of it. And the third place battle hotting up. I don't think these two are going to be alone for much longer. McElnay now under real pressure from number 6, Brian Morrison, in third place. Terry Reimer, however, still leading and looking as though he's going to be able to hold on to this one. After all, he came from third place with a very bold overtaking move through past Reynolds, almost bumped Rob McElnay off the track, but never mind, it got him there. And that third place battle, there you have third place McElnay, fourth place Morrison, and fifth Jamie Whittam, who has, well, he's been in that position and been trying hard the whole race, Whittam.
Yes, and his bike does look like it's a good match for the other makes of bike on this track here at Oulton Park. He's hanging on well, and when it comes to the last couple of laps, Jamie seems to grow horns and something extra comes out, and he seems to be able to go through on the brakes in any particular place. So that's something to watch for as things hot up over the last couple of laps. But the main problem, going back to the Reynolds situation with the bike shaking, is mainly grip. He's light, it's damp conditions, the bike has an awful lot of horsepower. Terry's probably getting on for twice John Reynolds' weight, believe it or not, and that really does make a difference.
Well, 6'2", Terry Reimer, as I said, a very, very tall man indeed. Long, long legs, and you can see them down on the tarmac more often than not. And Reynolds, number 3, right with him, has to move, John Reynolds has to move his entire body weight across the bike simply because his legs are almost off the footrest. They're just not long enough maybe to get where he wants to get, but nevertheless a terrific rider with a brilliant future ahead of him. Reynolds, fairly young by in terms of seasons in professional road racing, just 6 full seasons. Began his career in vintage racing. Prior to that, he was a motocross rider. and is one of the bright lights on the UK scene. In fact, both these men are bright lights, as it were. 5th place in the Grand Prix for Terry Reimer, leading the Supercup Championship. John Reynolds, however, determined to take the lead away from him if there's anything he can do about it. Now, this is the very banked right-handed corner, the Shellows hairpin. Coming out of there, they go down towards the chicane. The left and the right, Fulstons. Now, up through the gearbox. Let's see how quick this Norton is. Over the brow of the hill, yes, it's going away, just a fraction. And now, down towards Knickerbrook. Reynolds closing in on the brakes, Roger.
Yeah, the Kawasaki does appear to be handling better. Whenever there is a corner or a braking area, Reynolds does seem to close, but Terry's an expert at getting the power, and the back wheel will be trying to break free on the Norton. He gets out of the corners exceptionally good. You can see then that there were tail enders in the picture, so we've got 1 lap to go as they come around to complete this, the 13th lap. So if those guys get in the way, then that's where the race could be won or lost.
Well, they've done 36 miles. Tail enders ahead of them. 1 lap then. 2.77 miles of the Oulton Park circuit left to do. And this could be the most demanding lap that Terry Reimer's had to do. And there's a touch, and that just underlines the tail ender. Terry Reimer's on the grass. The tail ender did not know he was there. He has thrown away the lead, and he's going to stay on it. Not easy. Oh, poor Terry. He tried and tried and tried, but slick tyres on the grass, and he cannot believe it. Well, it's as simple as that. Terry Reimer must be in tears, devastated. John Reynolds, however, with the tail enders ahead of him, is now going to what looks like the championship win. It's certainly the race win. That is unbelievably bad luck for Terry Reimer. Roger, was that a rash move on Terry's behalf? Should he have waited just a second?
It's very difficult to say. As I mentioned in the earlier manoeuvre that Terry did, he was riding very hard in this race with a lot of determination. My opinion is that he overcooked it there. He should have waited. There was no way that the slower rider that he was passing would know he was there, and he couldn't have expected to have been given the room that he really needed to take the corner.
With race leader and what's looking like race winner John Reynolds cresting the hill, the news is for Kawasaki that Morrison is up to second place from Whittam, having gone past Rob McElnay. So a blindingly quick finish to get another Kawasaki 1-2. Morrison took his life in his hands. And Terry Reimer totally dejected and, I have to say, in tears. Roger, talk us through this.
You can see, I think it's Tom Knight, he's going into the corner, he's trying to use all the road, and Terry had no chance of getting through there, and he couldn't have expected that the rider could have actually seen what was going on. It is Tom Knight. In fact, Terry had no option but to take to the grass. He then was anxious to get back on the track and to try and maintain some kind of position in this race, but the rest of it's history. He lost control on the grass, it's very slippery, and Reynolds won. So, as I said, that is what can happen, and backmarkers do play a part in these races.
Confirmation then of an eventful 750cc race. Reynolds from Morrison, Whittam, McElnay, Dunlop. Mark Farmer brought the Roton into 6th. Poor Terry Reimer, however, no result. What a catastrophe for him. Standings then after what was a terrifically exciting, although disappointing race for Terry Reimer, dropping him 1 point behind the new championship leader Brian Morrison, John Reynolds, Dunlop, McElnay and Jamie Whittam. The front row lineup will be as it was for leg 1. In pole position, Rob McElnay, of course, who had a terrific ride in that one, coming home in 4th place, but was a little bit outpaced by the Kawasaki's and, of course, the Norton. So Rob McElnay again on pole position, and the weather conditions here have improved enormously, so we're looking maybe for the lap record to go. Alongside him, the winner of that race, after that hectic collision with Terry Reimer. John Reynolds, number 3. So Reynolds, the second fastest qualifier, could almost clinch the title here this afternoon. I haven't quite done my maths, so I'll check on that one a bit deeper into the race. Let's see how Reynolds fares. In the middle of the grid, on the Roton, number 46, Mark Farmer. The Brian Crichton machine being fettled at the last minute. Just a slight problem there for the Ulsterman. He had a not very good start in the previous encounter, so let's maybe hope that he can get off the line a bit better. That's the footrest bracket, and indeed the gear linkage being tweaked there for Mark Farmer. So let's hope that he's going to indeed get the bike prepared in time for the off. Terry Reimer has got over his disappointment, I suppose, to some degree, but he was immensely upset at having to throw away the lead, having gone onto the grass, and with it any chance, I think, realistically speaking, of winning the championship, bearing in mind he cannot compete in Brands Hatch. And completing the front row, the number 6 Kawasaki of Brian Morrison, number 6, who followed his teammate home in second place in the first leg. So Brian Morrison, the new championship leader by 1 point from Terry Reimer. So every likelihood, I think, Roger, of this being another gripping 750 encounter.
If it's anything like the first leg, I think we're in for a thriller. Let's hope that Terry Reimer has not damaged that number 1 machine of his, and he's got onto the grid on his best bike. So
Kawasaki, Roton, Norton and Kawasaki. A right mixture of machinery, I have to say. And lurking on the second row, the Suzuki of Jamie Whittam, who also had a very good start. 14 laps ahead of them then, and it was Morrison, number 6, who took the whole shot into Old Hall Corner, followed by Terry Reimer. So Kawasaki, not the Kawasaki we expected to see in front, but it's Morrison. Reimer, though, this time, goes straight into the lead to make amends for that. Oh, and Rob McElhenney squeezing through, forcing Brian Morrison wide. So the Yamaha-mounted McElhenney has set off in pursuit of Terry Reimer. Well, the Kawasaki men caught napping again.
yeah, the Roton made a very good start. Mark Farmer's currently in 4th place, so Rob McElhenney takes the lead. Rob's very aggressive, as he won't be too happy with Terry Reimer from that earlier manoeuvre that Reimer made on him in the first leg. But so it's Rob Mac leading from Reimer. Reynolds is sitting nicely there in 3rd. The Roton 4th. Robert Dunlop 5th. Morrison 6th. Whittam 7th. So that's how they stand. It'll take a couple of laps to sort things out, but it looks like Rob McElhenney's really going for it.
Well, for those of you who don't understand anything about engine configurations, there are 3 rotary engine bikes in the top 6, and they have things that spin round and round rather than things that go up and down in the shape of pistons. If that's the best way I can explain it, then that'll have to do, I think. But it's a rotary in second place. It's a conventional 750cc 4-cylinder Yamaha in the hands of Rob McElhenney out in front. The number 1 bike, last year's championship winner, who rode very well into 4th in race 1, but the 2 Nortons now up into 2nd and 3rd. John Reynolds is fighting back hard. He knows what he's got to do, and he'd like to put this championship out of reach of anyone else if he possibly can before they get to Brands Hatch. But Rob McElhenney has been waking up, I think it's fair to say, as the season has progressed, and he's really coming good now. So big Rob McElhenney out in the lead, 3 or 4 bike lengths. Terry Reimer still there with Robert Dunlop, who had his first national short circuit win on the rotary bike at Cadwell last weekend. Absolutely delighted with that. So Robert Dunlop showing that he can ride the big bike, not just on the true road circuits such as the Ulster Grand Prix, the Northwest 200 and the Isle of Man TT, but can also adapt his diminutive figure and his riding style to the short circuits as well. And he is now going very well indeed, along with teammate Terry Reimer. And the Kawasaki of Reynolds is now up to 4th. Number 3 then, John Reynolds, up to 4th. Mark Farmer, number 46, on the Roton. We're now riding with Reynolds in 4th place. Ahead of us, the 2 Nortons, and they certainly are quick.
This is the problem that that Reynolds and the conventional 4-cylinder machines face with the rotaries. They pull away down the straights, and then they're very difficult to get past in the corners. You'll see Reynolds close, I'm sure, as we approach Lodge corner there, you see he's catching up. There is Reynolds, bike number 3. But on-bike camera giving us fantastic pictures there of what's happening in front. But Reynolds has got it all to do. I've got to say that it's not easy to pass these Nortons.
Well, they're in line astern, but Mark Farmer now in 5th place on the Roton, the number 46 rider, is beginning to put just a little bit of pressure on. In fact, there's nothing to separate the top 8, and Jamie Whittam, number 5, going through on the inside of Brian Morrison, and Whittam it is. Look at Whittam on the Suzuki number 5 now, on the back end of the number 46 Roton of Mark Farmer. So the Ulsterman being chased. Here we are now with the Suzuki of Whittam, and ahead of us the number 46 Roton, and Whittam is going in. He's a demon on the brakes into the Shell Oil's banked hairpin, out and now up through the gearbox, dropping down towards the left, right, left chicane of Fulstons, and Whittam now up to 6th place. And I think we're going to be treated to a fairly spectacular shot of Jamie Whittam going past the Roton. We're right in the slipstream. We're 150 miles an hour at this point. But the Roton was good on the brakes, or maybe that was by accident, because they don't stop very well, do they?
Isn't it fantastic to see the machines leaning over, the rider's knees going onto the road, which is acting as a device to actually prop the machine up should the back end break away and slide a little bit, a gauge for the rider to feel exactly what's happening. And absolutely incredible. I noticed Reynolds had got ahead of Robert Dunlop, so that putting Reynolds, we can see there, in front of Robert Dunlop, so a sandwich between the two Nortons. Farmer's Roton then didn't appear too much quicker than Whittam Suzuki, although in that shot there it did.
All credit to Brian Crichton, though. The Roton really does handle it. Looked very, very stable indeed. Having said that, it gave a mighty shake of the head just as I spoke, and I think I'd better stop saying things like that. Rob McElnay, though, with Terry Reimer and then John Reynolds. And Reynolds is closing on the back of Terry Reimer. They've been in this position before, and we're with Reynolds now, 3rd place, going for 2nd. And have we got it? Yes, we have. John Reynolds, number 3, then, up to 2nd place. But where's the black shape of Terry Reimer? He's been left behind on the left-hand side. Ahead of us, the race leader, number 1, Rob McElnay. That Yamaha, very quick, and that amazes me, because I would have thought the Kawasaki is certainly the quickest motorcycle out there, but it doesn't appear to be the case.
Rob Mack was the pole position man. I think in the first leg he got pushed back a little bit by Terry Reimer, that overtaking manoeuvre, which Terry was committed. There's no blame on Terry's part for that, but Rob's trying to make amends in this. He's gone out, tried to lead it from the front, which is probably what Rob does best. Reynolds is now tracking him down inch by inch, corner by corner, getting closer, and I feel it's a matter of time before Reynolds actually makes his move on McElnay.
I'm looking at the Roton number 46, Mark Farmer, who's definitely got 2nd wind. He's back past Jamie Whittam. There we are then, the Crawley-based Ulsterman on the Roton, who has really clicked with that bike and has galloped to 2 3rd places, really putting it across the factory teams in no uncertain manner this season, is now putting the factory Norton of Robert Dunlop under some enormous pressure. Number 20 then Dunlop. This is Mark Farmer. But Whittam again hasn't given up. 2 lengths between Whittam and Mark Farmer, so a seesaw battle. And on the tail end of that is the championship leader, as going for the front, Reynolds on the inside of Rob McElnay. Number 3, John Reynolds, takes the lead from Rob McElnay into this tight right-hander, heeling it over. McElnay won't give up, though. He's very determined, the 31-year-old Humbersider, carrying the number 1 plate from his championship success last year, won't want to relinquish it that easily, even though it's becoming a bit of a fait accompli as far as John Reynolds is concerned, but he could well go to Brands Hatch.
This, you see, Reynolds has actually lent on the outside and coming through. The speed there was quite phenomenal of Reynolds' Kawasaki compared to McElnay's Yamaha. That was the overtaking movement that's put this man, number 3, John Reynolds, into the lead as they go through Druids, but as you said, McElnay won't give up.
Neither will Terry Reimer, number 23, in 3rd place, and they're staying much more bunched up than I thought they would have done. I thought maybe this race would have got just a little bit spread out, but into Deer Leap again, cresting the top when the front goes very light indeed. Over the line they go towards the right-hander of Old Hall, third or fourth gear, 90 miles an hour round here. Down the avenue, heads down, tucking in behind the Perspex. Whittam, number 5, is again past the number 46 Roton. So Jamie Whittam has got the two Nortons ahead of him again, but this now a three-way scrap for the lead. Reynolds from McElnay, Reimer, Dunlop, Whittam and Farmer. Those are the top 6. The 3 rotary engine bikes again proving to be more than a match for the conventional engined Japanese machinery. McElnay then closing, hunting on the tail end of John Reynolds, not letting the Nottingham man get away that easily. These two have the utmost respect for each other, having ridden at this sort of level and in this close proximity right through the season. Jamie Whittam again, the Farmer Roton is ahead of him, so number 46 Mark Farmer has gone in front of Jamie Whittam, and it's unbelievably, blindingly quick. When he winds the throttle back, the bike just bullets away from Jamie Whittam's Suzuki, and Jamie Whittam from Huddersfield has to do it all on the brakes and just watch as he goes into Lodge. It'll be the brakes, Druids here, hard round now, up towards Lodge will be the next hard right-hander, and Whittam goes in there very, very quick indeed. He'll be looking for the inside line. In fact, Farmer's every bit as quick, because ahead of him is Dunlop. Astonishing pictures, Roger.
You could see from those pictures the contours of Oulton Park make it very difficult for the riders to see what's coming up. There's hills, there's blind corners, so that's what makes it so interesting. Back to the action at the front though, with Reynolds, Rob McElnay not being shaken off, and Reimer sitting pretty there, watching the action in front of him. Reynolds takes a glance over his shoulder. His pit board would have told him that Rob McElnay was plus 0 seconds behind him, but he wanted to have a look for himself there, and maybe he'll try and wind up the wick a little bit now and try and make a break.
Well, the point you made about the circuit being so undulating as to make the riders not be able to see half the track was underlined by John Reynolds, who says at the top of Clay Hill he actually lines his bike up with 3 trees, points it for the middle tree, and he knows that when he crests the brow of the hill he will be somewhere on or very close to the racing line. Number 6 Brian Morrison has got past Jamie Whittam, and Jamie Whittam now has got all this slop, and it's a lot of traffic ahead of him. The tail end of Brian Morrison, then it's Mark Farmer, and vanishing away into the distance is the Black Norton of Robert Dunlop, and Jamie Whittam seems to be slipping just a little bit off the pace. Could be problems?
Could be problems, could have overcooked the brakes, could have overcooked the tyres, or just maybe a lapse of concentration. You see him closing so tightly up on the brakes there, fantastic stuff. Brian Morrison, the bike in front of him. Morrison very slow exiting from there. Maybe Morrison's the man that's got the problem.
Whittam got very close then to Brian Morrison, number 6, and round the right-hander of Old Hall, away down the avenue again. Just a little right kink. The positions at the top of the race unchanged. Reynolds still out there from McElnay and Terry Reimer, but this the battle then for the lower order. Farmer, Morrison and Whittam, and we're riding with number 5 Jamie Whittam now.
Don't you think it's incredible that a rider can ride so close to each other at 150, 160 miles an hour? This is the slowest corner on the track, probably only 50 miles an hour, but at some of the faster points on the track, literally feet from another person that's doing a similar speed. And Whittam tries to go into the chicane there and pass Morrison without the best of results, but Morrison now appears to be just holding up Whittam a little bit. The Kawasaki stretching away a little bit now as we go down to Knickerbrook. This is the fastest corner on the racetrack, 150 miles an hour through there, down 1 gear, and then up through under the Dunlop Bridge through up to Druids, and this is at Druids corner with with Reynolds. Reimer's got through to second, that's what confused me there slightly. McElnay down to third, so we could be in for a Reimer-Reynolds battle again.
Second win for number 23, Terry Reimer. Up to second, as Roger said. Then John Reynolds, number 3, the race leader. And that freight train charging on behind. So McElnay, #1 on the bike, #3 in the race. Won't be too happy with that. 4th the last time out, wants to improve on that by more than 1 place, I would have thought. Reynolds, though, looking for a double win, and that will put his tally of wins on to 7. Unbelievably consistent, John Reynolds. And he's got 50 metres now ahead of Terry Reimer, whose Norton, of course, is very fast in a straight line, and Terry seems to ride it with an equal amount of ability around the bends. It certainly is good. He's got used to the running on problems. You see the rotary engine does not stop as readily in terms of engine braking as the conventional piston engine variety, so it does demand a whole new technique for riding it fast, and Terry Reimer has adapted to that admirably. That's the gap then, under a second, and it's visual. I don't need to tell you what the time is because you can see just how close Terry Reimer is, but John Reynolds appears to have everything under control. McElnay still hanging on in 3rd, and there's the gap for the rest of the field. It's Dunlop leading Farmer from Morrison and Whittam, and there's a 4-way scrap going on further down the order.
Reynolds looking as cool as ever. 22 national wins now to his credit over the British Championship season to date. Looking for win number 23 with this race, but Reimer out to stop that, and looking at the monitor of lap times from that lap, Reimer put in a slightly quicker lap than Reynolds, although the gap appears to have stayed roughly about the same.
There has to be a limit, I suppose, to the degree to which these riders can lay the machines down, but Terry Reimer there at the Norton at an unbelievable angle. This is the Suzuki of Jamie Whittam. Ahead of us, Robert Dunlop, and that means Mark Farmer on the Roton has gone up into 4th place. So there is Mark Farmer in the red leathers. He's in 4th. Now Whittam has got second wind as well, got the bit between his teeth, because that means that we can really elevate the job forward, thinks James. I've got the Suzuki on the boil. If I can only dive inside at the chicane, and oh, that was close. Had a good look at the inside of Robert Dunlop's Norton there, and we're right on the tail end with Jamie Whittam. Up through the gearbox here, over the brow of the hill, and charging down towards Knickerbrook, 150 miles an hour into the right-hander. And Morrison has gone past as well. He saw the opportunity. Jamie Whittam left the door wide open. Through on the right-hand side went number 6, Brian Morrison. And this is incredible stuff. Whittam really riding the pants off the Suzuki here. He goes as hard as he can. Being passed by Morrison, slipping past, having a go at the rotary Norton, weaving, dodging in and out, up the inside on the brakes. And Whittam having gone past again, and these two are no strangers, of course. And this reminds me of the Supercup battles between Whittam and Morrison some 4 years ago when we first started this series, when Jamie was only 21, a wild youngster. He's now a bit older, but he's still every bit as wild.
This is Jamie Whittam's strength, is his braking ability. Probably for the most of the year, the Suzuki that Nick Grant is developing is in its early stages. It is getting better as the year goes on, and James is getting the best out of it, one would have to say. But when it comes to the braking area, he's outstanding, and if he could get close enough to Robert Dunlop in front of him and to Mark Farmer, I'm sure that he would be able to pass them braking.
This the battle for 4th, 5th, 6th and 7th, and Whittam almost on the grass. There wasn't anywhere else to go. He was using all the track and another foot as well, I think, to the left of the circuit there. But he's right with Robert Dunlop, and the Suzuki's trying to throw him off at every opportunity. Really is shaking his head, but he's keeping the throttle nailed back. But Morrison has gone ahead. I think that last twitch unsettled James Whittam just a fraction. It looked a bit naughty from where we were sitting, and I think it was probably a lot more uncomfortable on the motorcycle. Farmer then still ahead of Robert Dunlop, so a great ride by Mark Farmer, 4th place. I don't think there's anything he can do to improve on that. We just saw a flash of the 3rd place man, Rob McElnay, disappearing out of your picture. But Farmer now, if he can just shake off this bunch and get away, he might have a chance of closing in onto 3rd. But there is quite a gap. Farmer leads Dunlop. Morrison, number 6, and Jamie Whittam having another look again on the brakes. Morrison goes through on the inside of Dunlop. Oh, Roger, this is great stuff. It's a pity it's not the race for the lead.
And Dunlop's fighting back, but Morrison held him off there, down, through into Cascades. There you see we're on bike with Jamie Whittam and the Norton in front of Robert Dunlop. The back end squirming as Dunlop puts the power on, and then off it goes as a missile, but Whittam will soon close up on that because we go round Island Bend, then to the Shell Oils hairpin, and that's where Whittam can catch on the brakes, as you see. If only Whittam could get past Robert Dunlop, I do feel that he would be able to probably go with the Roton and with Brian Morrison. You can see those two in the distance at the chicane, and this is where Whittam's exceptionally good, but you almost feel frustrated for him that he can't actually get by, because all the time he's wanting to, and he's been held up in places where he could increase his lap time.
Number 20, Robert Dunlop, multiple TT winner, and had to settle for second place in the 125 TT this year to his elder brother Joey, very much a veteran, but that was a tremendous result, moving his brother on to a record number of TT wins. That apart, however, Jamie Whittam doing everything he knows to get the Suzuki past the Norton, but not so, said Robert Dunlop. And meanwhile, Brian Morrison, number 6, having a look at the inside of Mark Farmer on the Roton, number 46, and the Roton going a little bit wide through the bottom of Dearly, over the line again they go. The Roton screaming its way around here, proving that it's a match, certainly a match for the rest of the top British teams. And Japanese teams come to that. Farmer then on this Brian Crichton built and developed as Jamie Whittam. Back end locked up, another shake of the head by the Suzuki, and he's going on the outside of Dunlop, but no way. There was nowhere for him to go. The Ulsterman moved over just a fraction, down towards Island Bend, sweeping round here, and then the hairpin. Here we go, on the inside. Is there room? No, it's a bit close, but maybe a dash down to Fulston's, and he'll go for the left, I'm sure. Dunlop will be just a little bit too wise, I suspect, and will close the door, but this is where Whittam, no way through. And again, I think, Roger, we're going to see the superior speed of the Norton pull away from the Suzuki up the hill, and the power to weight ratio, bearing in mind Robert Dunlop's size, has to be a factor.
Reimer's looking for, Morrison's looking for the inside from Farmer and takes it in a breathtaking manoeuvre there, 140 miles an hour into Knickerbrook. So that's put Morrison now up into 4th place ahead of Farmer. Morrison, of course, needs to get this 4th place, because the championship going into the last round at Brands Hatch will all be about Brian Morrison and John Reynolds as two teammates dicing it out for the lead, but it's now Morrison that's got that secure 4th spot.
Has Mark Farmer got anything left by way of a reply, I wonder, to Brian Morrison? So the number 46 Roton then relegated now to 5th. This, however, on the last lap, the battle for the lead, with John Reynolds, number 3, still heading Terry Reimer, who I think, it's fair to say, will have no chance of pulling in that deficit. There's too much of a gap now. The Kawasaki of Reynolds very quick, although Reimer's putting in a charge on the last lap, but I think he might have left it too late. Would have dearly loved, I'm sure, to have made up in some way towards that misfortune in the first leg, when he had it all taken away from him in the last half lap because of the tail enders and a rash judgment, I think, an error made in the heat of the moment. Which side do I go? And he chose the wrong side. Maybe a touch of impatience as well, but that's racing, that's what it's all about. Reynolds then, I think, heading to what looks like a double win here at Oulton Park, and will move him into a very strong position going into Brands, as will his teammate Brian Morrison be. 2 weeks' time, the final round from Brands Hatch, and that will bring our National Motorcycle Racing Series to a close here on Grandstand. But the checkered flag now being readied. Reynolds over the line, Terry Reimer second, McElnay comes over in 3rd, but John Reynolds thinks, quite rightly so, that he's done enough. Maybe a good day's work here at Oulton, could be on target for his first 750cc championship here on television. having already, though, clinched an alternative championship in the UK just last week. So, very much the man in form. A good win for John Reynolds, number 3. Now, confirmation of the top 6. There you have it. Reynolds from Reimer, Mackle